This conference will now be recorded.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Kathy Neifeld with AgencyONE. It is Friday, TGIF, and this is part 3 of our 3-part series on Annexus, and we welcome everybody that is on the call. The call on Monday, as you all remember, introduced the AgencyONE and Annexus relationship. And then the call on Wednesday, we talked about, we kind of drew the curtain back a little bit and talked about magic behind the scenes and how the products are built and the index strategies. And today we're going to do a bit of a deeper dive into the PRISM index and the Securian product. And we're also going to discuss crediting strategies, how you can use this product, some design flexibility. And we're going to also hear about underwriting with these products and the best way to sell them. We've got a number of participants that are going to be presenting today. It's going to be kicked off and moderated by my partner, Gonzalo Garcia, from the Annexus, silo on this call. We're going to have James Hahn, who you heard from on Monday, who's an executive vice president of life sales and distribution. And then we're also going to be hearing from Alan Zuckerman, who is a national life specialist with Annexus. And then from AgencyONE, wrapping it up, we're going to have Ed Stark talking about, again, case design and how to use the product. And we're going to get an underwriting update from Jessica. So with that, I am going to turn it over to my partner, Gonzalo Garcia, who's going to kick this off with James and Alan. Thank you so much.
Good. Thank you, Kathy. Good morning, everybody. Again, I'll just reiterate, hope everybody is safe this morning. If whoever's controlling the slides, if you could just go ahead and pop over to the next slide for me. We're going to try to have a little fun today, and we're going to get into kind of pretty much 5 areas, and then we're going to wrap up with Jessica's going to give us a little update on the Intelligent Underwriting and Right Fit Underwriting for these 2 companies. But, you know, we mentioned the other day that this is a proprietary IUL product. We're going to focus today on Securian because just in 30 minutes, we just don't have time to cover both. And we do plan on doing a little deeper dive, kind of longer, deep product training on each of these in the next several weeks. So we will be announcing those in short order. But we're going to really dig into 3 areas. One is the innovative uncapped index crediting strategies at Securian, specifically with their PRISM index. We're going to talk about how they perform in a variety of market conditions and give you some numbers. And we're also going to talk a little bit about how partial interest is credited, which is a really unique provision in how these products work and really differentiates them from the rest of the market. And then we'll talk a little bit about design flexibility and some other choices that you'll have here. So while today's conversation is really focused on Securian, I do want to mention that Securian right now, we have been onboarded and are ready to take Securian applications immediately. Nationwide is probably going to be another couple of weeks before we're up and running with Nationwide. So just want to give you everybody a heads up on that. But between now and by the time we're up and running, we will have some more calls on Nationwide specifically. Advance the slide for me, please. So the Securian product is called the Balanced Growth Accumulator 2. It is an index universal life product. Give me the next slide, please. And I'm going to let Mr. Stark talk a little bit here about kind of, what this product is and how we work with it. This is not going to be new to anybody, but Ed, just run us through this very quick.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. So, the biggest thing with this product is it's an accumulation product. So if you're looking for that $1 at 100 or $1 at 90, this isn't the product you want to use. This is a product that you want to do a minimum non-max face amount. You want to put in as much cash as possible. We do the option 2 death benefit, and we grow it over time. Then we freeze the death benefit when the contributions stop, and then we generate the income. Sometimes we can do a face drop after. So it's a pure max accum sale. So again, this is a great product for that, and it's really how we want to design these. So LERP design, if you want to call it minimum non-max face. Sometimes it's not really about the face amount. It's more of I have 15,000 a year, and then I solve for the face. or I want to do 10,000 for 10 years, that kind of thing. So just keep it in mind, it's an accumulation IUL product.
Yeah, and Ed, I mean, this is one report that comes out of the Annexus software, and I do want to make a point. You'll see this a little bit later on. Anybody who registers to work with Annexus and AgencyONE will have access to my Annexus website. Their software is available as well as a whole bunch of other information. We'll get into that later. But they have a portal for both Nationwide and Securian that will allow you to either run illustrations. Obviously, Ed Stark and the rest of the illustration team are available to do these. But again, I want to reemphasize what I said. These are not protection-based products. These are max accum retirement supplement products, and that's where you really get into why the index options are so unique and so well suited for this kind of sale. So I'm going to let Alan Zuckerman just take right over from here. Alan, I think you're in control of the slide, so why don't you just jump in and get right into the PRISM index?
Absolutely. So the unique indices on the Securian product is that S&P PRISM index. And that was an index that was developed. You all heard from Tom Haynes on Wednesday. He talked about how we develop indices and how we build them and kind of some of the things that go into them. And this is one of those that is an output from that and is powering, in part, the Securian BGA, Balanced Growth Accumulator product. I do want to mention a couple of things from that, one of those opening slides of those 5 main points, and one being that proprietary and exclusive product. You guys, and I'm sure you've heard, I think probably James talked about this on Monday a little bit, but very unique distribution, only 18 organizations that have access to these products in this index. This index was added to the product after we originally released it as a result of being in a kind of a forecasting kind of model as opposed to a back-tested model in terms of what will be performing going forward as opposed to what has performed in previous markets. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a moment. But this was a design of the S&P Global Corporation as well as Tom Haynes in conjunction with one another. And the S&P Global Corporation manages this whole process. The second thing from that opening slide I just wanted to kind of mention is Gonzalo referred to that partial index credit. That is one of the areas that separates this product from any other product that we are aware of in the marketplace. And the part of this that really becomes very, very important is the idea that this product along that part of the product is part of the 15 patents and 17 pending patents that are issued on this policy and our annuity contracts. There is no other product in the life insurance space that carries that many patents. And the intellectual capital and science behind it in conjunction with our actuarial team. And we have 16 actuaries on staff in conjunction with Genesis Financial, our partner in actuarial work, that have developed and are partners on those patents. Very, very unique. So there's a lot of intellectual capital and science behind the development, for example, of those partial index credits. And we'll go into those in just a moment. But the goals and the design of PRISM. PRISM is designed to smooth volatility and create very consistent and stable returns. And we'll look at returns, we'll look at historicals here in a moment. But smoothing volatility, consistent and stable returns. The second thing it's designed to do is navigate through a variety of market conditions. Again, you will see it over history. You'll see how it's navigated good times, bad times, and has remained relatively stable and very sustainable. PRISM is really not designed, to use a baseball analogy, it's not designed to hit home runs. It's very much designed to hit singles and doubles all the time. So you see a much narrower band of returns, very consistent, so that when you get the person that looks at sequence of returns and how does that happen, this is one of those that levelizes the playing field as opposed to being all S&P all the time. And it offers a dynamic multi-asset class diversification. And that's the big reason why number 1 and number 2 are part of this design. So that it's a 3-part, or actually a 4-part index. You have equities, you have bonds, you have commodities, and the commodities is one of the areas where S&P is unique. Most low volatility indexes within the IUL space do not have commodities as part of their index. But commodities is one of those things that allows it to garner the returns. And the fact that PRISM is daily reweighted and reallocated. So it's an algorithm traded index that's managed by S&P Global, and every single day at the end of the business day, at the end of the trading day, that algorithm is applied and it's reweighted and allocated. The example there that I would give to give you the idea of how well this works, in 2018, when oil, until about September 20th of 2018, oil had a big run up to $70 a barrel. But sometime around mid-month, September, oil started to tank. And it actually, by the end of the year, went down into the 40s a barrel. Of course, we know very different even today what's happened just this year. But we were very heavily weighted within the commodities portion of the index early in the year because it was on a run. And in a forecasted model that's traded on an algorithm, it told us to have oil as part of our commodities. Well, because it's daily reweighted, we were able to divest of the oil holdings in the commodities portion, and therefore it actually outperformed the S&P for the year by 5%. Had this been a traditional kind of index in IUL, it would be a quarterly reweighting or possibly even an annual reweighting, and we would have missed that and rode oil all the way down into the 40s, lost the majority of the value. So it works, and the design being daily and the design having equities, bonds, commodities, and cash has worked very much to the advantage. In fact, year to date this year, PRISM is actually basically dead even. It's at pretty much zero. It's been between 30 basis points up to 60 basis points down for the year. Somewhere it's been riding in that range for the year. Whereas you know that the S&P in the broad market is down, in the mid-20s, I think, or something close to that. So PRISM has...
To your point,
yes.
just real quick, you made a good point about, when we think about the S&P PRISM, I mean, it's really about that. It's not static, right? I mean, the ability to, to shift, multi-asset shifting away from potential volatility, right? And therefore, we're able to smooth things out. That's a big, powerful message that Al said. It's dynamically rebalancing. We're not static. We're not just stuck with the S&P. If we were stuck, then we would have been in trouble. The other part that he said is really important about the year-over-year returns. The year-over-year returns compared to the S&P is somewhere in that 12 range down year-over-year. The S&P PRISM is up somewhere in that 6 range, 7 range without the par rates. So we'll spend more time on this, but the ability to have multi-asset, dynamically rebalancing when needed, and as an advisor for your client, we're not going to get your client stuck. They're not stuck. They're not stuck in the S&P, but you do get the S&P, but you do it more of a smarter way. Al, go ahead, buddy.
So when we look at returns over a longer period of time, going back to 1997, we look at the S&P 500. There's PRISM, and you see very narrow band. There isn't a lot of peaks and valleys. They're very narrow. It's compressed. And when you overlay the S&P during that same period of time, and you see the huge peaks, the huge valleys, PRISM just does not participate in most of that. And of course, you know that since 1997, there have been multiple major events in the economy. You had the dot-com bubble, and you had the financial crisis, and then you had starting of the big run-up and the bull market. But you see that PRISM was just very consistent, very narrow band, and a steady kind of shot moving up all the time. And that's what PRISM is designed to bring, that consistency and the stability to the portfolio. While you may also have an allocation to the full S&P, this brings that stability and removes the volatility to a large part of that portfolio. So very, very consistent returns. Yes.
Hey, Alan, this is Gonzalo. We've all run illustrations for years and years and years, and whether it's variable or universal or whole life or whatever, I mean, consistent, unvolatile returns are really what makes, a great portfolio. a max accumulated IUL or even a VUL if you could get that sort of stability, or low volatility. But the point is that, you know, both in an accumulation phase and maybe more importantly in a distribution phase, that lack of volatility is what really makes these illustrations work. So kudos to you guys on putting that together. Thank you. Go ahead, Al.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm sure most of you are looking at that and saying, that's great, you're very consistent, narrow band of returns, but what do the returns look like? What does that really mean in hard numbers? So we look at going back to 1997, and you look at that middle column of what the S&P did in each of those years. And the right-hand column, you see what PRISM did. Now, I have to caution you, these returns are not inside of IUL. This is the returns of the raw market as if you were buying these just as an investment outside of IUL. These are raw market returns. So that when you see down in the right-hand corner, you see that the full time period from 1997 to 2019, the S&P averaged 6.61%. Remember, PRISM is not designed to keep pace with the S&P over long periods of time. It's designed, as Gonzalo just talked about, to be very consistent returns. Because when you take that 5.15% return of the raw market, the raw index, and you apply the par rates inside of IUL, that's when you start to see the magic happen. But let's just take a look at a couple of scenarios. We talked about consistency, stability, and narrow bands of returns. Look at that 2000 to 2002. Where the market didn't perform very well, and PRISM actually outperformed the market. You look at 2008. If you're talking to your clients and the rest of their investment portfolio is down 38.5%, and you could show them their IUL is up 10% plus par rate, you have a very good story to talk about. But even when it loses, and there are time periods that the raw market loses, it's very tiny losses in the market. So again, it's that consistency factor, as Gonzalo talked about, and the sustainability of the investment. So the models here are based off of that just over a 5% rate of return. If PRISM does 5.1% rate of return, then when we look at what PRISM has done inside of the IUL when you apply par, then you're going to see what it really comes to look like. So how do you buy PRISM in the product? You buy PRISM in the product one of two ways. You have a 1-year point-to-point with 135% allocation, 105% par rate, and in the Annexus world, and here's where a little change of lingo has to come in, par rate in the Securian world is what you all know as a multiplier or a bonus. Index allocation is what you traditionally know as par rate. So getting comfortable with what the terminology means, but 135 allocation, a 105 par, no spreads, no fees, no asset or strategy costs. That's a net number. That's a net number.
Your example, Al, so what you're saying is so if it does 5.5, let's just say you're getting 135% of the 5.5, right? 5.5 times 135%, right? And that's what you're getting. Fair?
Plus the 105. Yeah, yes. Plus the 105. So you'd get the 5 times 135, that number times 105, and that would be your net return to the contract. Exactly right. Exactly right. Then you have a second option, which is a 3-year point-to-point. One of the things you need to understand about Annexus is we have mastered the multi-year index. One of the cornerstones within our development and our methodologies is multi-year indexing. And that's part of many of the those 15 issued and 17 pending patents is how we do multi-year indexing. So you'll see a lot of that within our product. But one of the things that we know, some of the intellectual capital and research, the R&D that we do, we know that we can get better overall returns by going out a longer time period. And that has proven to be very, very true, particularly within the BGA product. So we have a 3-year segment as well. That's a 200% index. So James, to your point, if you did 5, you get 200% of 5. And then you get a 115 par rate. Again, no spreads, no strategy fees, no asset fees. That is a net number to the contract. Very, very powerful and lucrative. So what do the returns look like? Now we take that 5.15, we apply the par rates we just looked at, and here's your 10-year rolling averages. So we went back 20 years, and we took every 10-year rolling period of the last 20 years. And you know, in the last 20 years, in 2008, we had one of the worst markets ever in the history of investments. And we've also had the greatest bull run. So we have had extremes in the market during this time. And so you look at this and you say, you apply par to that 515, and on the 1-year index, you would net 793 in the product. And on the 3-year, that's an annualized average, you would average 10.99. Even in the worst 10-year period, the 1-year is at 5.94. Now, the illustrated rate here, this unfortunately has not been updated, but the new max illustrated rate according to AG49, 6.28. Excuse me, 6.01. It changed just recently. We just haven't gotten that updated to 6.01. But know that the illustration system is accurate at 6.01. But even so, if you illustrate at the max illustrated rate, it's almost dead on to the worst 1-year period average there is, and it's significantly below the 10-year average.
Yeah,
and so
go ahead, Al. Go.
No, I was just going to say, we absolutely believe that our max illustrated rates are significantly below, and we will be under-promising and over-delivering. If you remember how AG49 max rates were created, and you all know this as well as I do or better, that it's a formula based on the S&P and the carrier's general account, but AG49 never took into consideration uncapped or low volatility indexes. There's no accommodation for that in the calculation. So we have to play by the rules, and we do play by the rules very closely, so that when we use that max illustrated rate, we are significantly overperforming as an average the max illustrated rates and creating a much more conservative illustration than what outwardly appears. And understanding that is very, very important. James, go ahead.
What Al said right there is crucially important. So it's about managing expectations, right, to the client. And by the way, our section is going to be done here in about 2.5 minutes, and we're going to give it to Jessica or Gonzalo, whoever we need to go next. We'll make sure we're on time, being sensitive to everyone. What I want you to take away here is when you look at these returns, what you're asking the index to do in this example on the 10-year average, what Al said is so crucial, around 5.5. You're asking the index to do around 5.5% return in order to get these averages, and that is crucially important in an IUL design versus what you see in the marketplace today on an S&P design. If you show a 6.28 illustrated rate and you've got a 5% spread in there, you're asking the index to do 11%. Now, again, going back to the original call when we first launched our relationship with AgencyONE, we all know, you all know, on a going forward basis, there's no way in heck the S&P is going to produce those kind of returns over the next 10 years like the last 10. So we've designed something where you get the smart S&P equities, but do it a smarter way, keep it consistent on base percentages, but have reasonable expectations for your client and what the index has to do. On base percentage, that's all we want. Al, go ahead, bud.
So we have a third option of uncapped strategy within this product, and that's a 2-year point-to-point, 2-year segment. It's a 90 allocation with 105% par. This is not PRISM. This is the full S&P. Again, with a 195 spread. So again, when you compare this to the traditional full S&P products out there, I think you'll see that this spread is very low. There's no strategy fee, no asset fees, no caps. Completely uncapped, 90% allocation, 105 par with a 195 spread. So in total, you have 3 uncapped strategies, a 1-year PRISM, a 2-year full S&P, and a 3-year PRISM. You can allocate between any or all of them, 1 contract, 1 application, and 1 policy gets issued. Very
hey,
simple.
Alan, this
Yes,
is
sir.
Gonzalo. I'm sorry to interrupt you. There is a question. Does PRISM benefit from using dollar cost averaging? Can you address that for just a minute?
Sure. So dollar cost averaging is an option within the contract. You don't have to do it, obviously. And I think really where the question is going is average buy-in and creating buckets.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if you dollar cost average or they pay monthly premium, you would actually be creating 12 buckets a year.
Right.
If you go in annual, they could pay annually and you dollar cost average and create the same 12 buckets. That is, you do have that option. It's an election on the application itself. But it isn't inherent. It's not always there. You have to elect it.
Real quick, Alan, to that point, so single premium, right? So someone brings single premium, that's an election of dollar cost average. They select the box, perfect, right? If you're paying monthly, you're already dollar cost averaging.
Yep. Go ahead, Alan. Thank you.
Okay, so 3 uncapped options within the contract, and that's a great option. So now we talk about that for those partial index credits. And partial index credits, while there's a real rate of return that happens from it, it really is about a product working intuitively the way your consumer thinks it should work. I mean, if you ask the consumer, of the dollars that come out of the contract for expenses, how much interest do you earn on them? And most consumers, I think, would say, well, it depends whatever the interest rate is on the point to point. And the truth of the matter is that's not really how contracts work, because those dollars come out on a monthly basis to pay the expenses monthly. Well, we said, gee, that's not very consumer intuitive. Why should some of their money sit there for 11 months and 29 days, some for 10 months and 29 days, 9 months, etc.? There has to be a way of benefiting the consumer. How do we put more dollars in the consumer's pocket? This is one of those areas we talked about early where those patents are involved, and this is the calculation of interest credits. And we calculate interest paid on all dollars that come out of the contract for cost of insurance, fixed loans, withdrawals, surrenders, debt. All of those things generate a calculation, a second calculation, real time. So let's just say on the 15th of the month, $100 of expense comes out of the contract for cost of insurance. We take a snapshot of the contract on the 15th of the month, and when that comes out, and we calculate a rate of return based on their allocation from the previous anniversary date to that 15th of the month, and we calculate a rate of return. And that rate of return is deposited into the accumulation value of the contract real time. So that if that would happen every single month, they would have more dollars at the end of the segment, that then the segment rate of return is calculated off of a higher balance. Another
Alan,
way,
nobody talks
yes.
Nobody talks about that. I mean, that is so unique, and it's just nobody even thinks to do that in other contracts.
Yeah, it's just not intuitive. I mean, right, exactly. So here's an opportunity as an advisor when you're talking to your clients and they say, gee, the ledger doesn't look quite as good as company B. I don't quite understand. Here's an area where you can really separate it to talk about those kinds of things, because this is that unique. But remember, we can only illustrate up to illustrated rate. Mm-hmm. So all of these credits are not in the ledger of the illustration, only to the degree up to that max illustrated rate. So when returns exceed illustrated rates, you're not going to see these credits inside the ledger of the illustration. So that is an introduction to credit when credit is due, or those partial index credits. How do you get money out? Because Gonzalo is very right. The 2 main reasons why you use VGA IUL is accumulation and maximum income. Well, there's 4 ways to get money out other than withdrawals. There's an index loan, industry leading 4.75% interest rate, contractually guaranteed. Can't increase. 475 contractually guaranteed for the life of the contract. The second way is fixed loans with no cost in years 11 and beyond. The third way is a variable loan, and that's available not in year 1, but starting in year 2, you can take variable loans. Currently, the loan rate on that is 3.25, and actually on May 1st, it's going down to 3%. Very, very effective. And there are some tricks to the variable loan in creating, again, James talked about setting expectations. There are some tricks to making that variable loan actually greater in terms of expectations and showing a more conservative loan while using variable loans. A lot of folks, they're only comfortable using fixed loans, potentially index loans, and we can show you some of those tricks, and we'll work with you, and Ed will work with you on how and why that may not be the most efficient way from an illustration perspective. And then there's a fourth way, these short-term interest-free loans, no cost for 90 days. Again, talk with the team at AgencyONE. There are some stipulations around that, some limitations. They'll talk you through what those short-term loans are and how to utilize them if that becomes appropriate for you. So 4 ways to get money out, very efficient, with some industry-leading rates on those loans. We look at our products, whether it be the Nationwide New Heights product or the product we just went through, BGA2, and we look at them in comparison to many of the companies that you look at and probably utilize. And we believe at Annexus that a big reason why a IUL contract is successful or not successful is actually the expenses. It's beyond cost of insurance, and it's beyond necessarily what the index rate of return is. A lot of that success has to do with these expenses. And one of the design features in our contract is very low expenses. There aren't a lot of tag-alongs, and it's very transparent. You see the total expenses in these contracts over 30 years. But when you look at BGA and the New Heights Nationwide, 0 asset-based fees, 0 strategy fees in those, and you see that the expenses actually over a 30-year period are significantly less than those competitors. We don't have time to expand a lot on this, but we think that this is actually some of the most critical information when you look at comparing contracts and why one may work better than another. We think that this is absolutely mission critical when you look at IUL. So to wrap it up, let me just reiterate that proprietary IUL product with Securian, highly rated company. You're one of very few organizations that have access to the product. Those innovative uncapped crediting strategies, PRISM, and our 2-year strategy performs in a variety of market conditions to keep that stability and sustainability for you. Those partial index credits that we talked about briefly and actually paying interest real time in the contract, that is unique, and those design flexibility and choices. So with that, I'll turn it over, I think, to Kathy, is it? To cover the electronic stuff?
I'll take this, Alan. This is just really quick. This is the myannexus.com. Anybody who registers will have access to this, and there's just a ton of really good educational information, and a lot of this is going to be available to you guys as you on board with Securian and Nationwide. And each company has their own kind of portal. I'd like to grab the next slide, and I think this is, really, really important, and ask Jessica to jump in. We've covered a lot, and but I want to get to the fact that, when we're talking about $50,000 or $100,000 premiums, these cases can be done in a labs-free underwriting environment today. Jessica, you want to talk about that a little bit? You need to unmute yourself, Jess. There you go. Nope. No. Lisa. Go ahead and mute. Tell you what, Jess, I'm sorry. I'll go ahead and cover this. If you can get your mic back, great. Labs-free underwriting at Securian right fit up to age 50, $3 million. Ed Stark, I think you're still on the phone. What's the premium on a 50-year-old for $3 million? What's the max funded premium?
Pay about $151,000, and that has a target of around $62,000.
So if you think, we've all been talking about labs-free underwriting over the last, month or so, and we're all talking about, small drop ticket term cases. You can write a labs-free underwritten case, accelerated underwriting, get a policy issued in a week, 10 days for $150,000 premium. So I just want to point that out because that's, I mean, you know, nobody's thinking about that. Up to age 60, we can go up to between 51 and 60, we can go up to $1 million. It's standard through preferred best non-tobacco, standard through preferred tobacco for Securian. Next slide, Alan. Nationwide is a little bit different. They'll go up to $2 million up to age 50 and $1 million between 51 and 60, preferred and preferred best non-tobacco and preferred tobacco. So I kind of ran through that pretty quickly. And Jessica, I'm sorry we never able to get you back on your mic. So sorry about that. Go ahead. Yeah.
All right, just one thing that we're having success with on both Nationwide and Securian, not only the acceleration, as in those bands you just showed, but we're picking up e-apps, you know, $15, $20 million on e-apps, right? On both cases.
Yeah. So electronic applications is important as well, but I mean, getting them out the other side is really where, you know, up to these, you know, $100,000, $150,000 premium cases, they are doable in an accelerated underwriting environment. So I just want to point that out, make sure everybody is aware of that. Somebody else wants to jump in. Go ahead.
And I would just add in, this is Al again, I would just add in, even as recently as Tuesday of this week, we had an advisor take 2 e-apps on a husband and wife, and the wife was actually pregnant. 2 e-apps on Tuesday and Thursday, and that was at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Chicago time, Thursday at 10 a.m. in the morning. But not only was it already underwritten, the policies were issued, and the clients signed the e-delivery.
It's incredible. So, you know, I would like to just give Jessica a shout out because she was on the committee, on the brokerage committee that helped Nationwide put together their intelligent underwriting program. So Jessica, I know you can't hear you, but thank you for that effort and for bringing that on board. And I know that both of these companies are having amazing success in their throughput on intelligent and right fit underwriting. So Kathy, I'm going to turn it back to you to wrap this up. I'm sorry we went over a few minutes. And from my perspective, I want to thank everybody for being on the call. Kathy?
Terrific. Gonzalo, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yep.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank everyone. So a little bit, some additional housekeeping. As Gonzalo mentioned, we are going to have some additional WebExes that are going to be deeper dives into both the Securian and Nationwide products. Information regarding those WebEx is going to be announced soon, and we're going to be asking you again to register and participate. Those will not be half-hour WebExes. They will probably be 45 minutes to an hour. In order to learn more about these products and to gain access to these slides and to sell these products, you're going to have to sign an additional producer agreement with AgencyONE. If you have any questions about that, we will please reach out to Gonzalo or myself, and we can provide you with that additional producer agreement, that addendum. AgencyONE had to go through some additional contracting with Annexus regarding how the products are distributed and sold and training, and they're holding everyone to obviously the highest of all standards. And we said we didn't have any issue with that. And we knew that our producers would not have any problem signing another producer agreement. So we'll be making that available to you as well. Regarding next week, and once you sign those producer agreements, you can gain access to the myannexus.com website and get obviously all this information. Let's move on to next week. I'm really excited about the slate of WebExes we have for you next week. We're going to take a left turn. And next week, it's all going to be about what's going on in the industry. Again, the WebExes are going to be on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 12 noon. The schedule and the registration is going to get sent out later this afternoon. On Monday, we're going to be featuring Colin Devine, who is a former investment analyst covering the insurance industry. And he's going to give us a state of the industry from a financial perspective. So Gonzalo and I had a couple calls with Colin earlier this week, and this is sure to be a fascinating 30 minutes. On Wednesday, we're going to be talking to Nate Shellhouse, who is a VP and actuary at Principal Financial Group. And you're going to be learning from the life insurance carrier's perspective what's happening with their products and what you can expect to see from a financial perspective. And that should also be extremely interesting. And then we're going to wrap the week up on Friday with the president of John Hancock, Brooks Tingle. And Gonzalo and Brooks are going to be doing a question and answer regarding what's happening again with John Hancock, how John Hancock is handling this COVID situation and what we can expect from John Hancock and possibly other carriers in the future. But this is going to be a really interesting week next week, so I hope all of you will join us for those 3 WebExes. Again, thank you for joining us for this Annexus 3-part series. And if you've got any questions, please reach out to Gonzalo or myself. We are at 12:41 and we went a little long. There are some additional questions that came in. We're going to be addressing those questions individually, and we will get back to everyone that has typed in a question. So I hope everybody has a great weekend. Stay safe. And we hope to hear from you again on Monday. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Take care. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.